Welcome to the latest Astley Media Project Positivity webcast. Today we're in conversation with self-styled Doctor of Happiness, Andy Cope, who tells us how we should treat Monday as the new Friday and how not to be a mood hoover. Enjoy. Hi Andy, how are you?
I'm very good, fella. And yourself?
Yeah, good, thanks. The first sunflowers came out in the garden this morning, so...
Oh, nice.
Reason to be cheerful.
Do you know what? That's probably an interesting place to start, because I don't know, I mean, since lockdown, we're recording this still kind of lockdown, aren't we?
Yeah.
And since March, this is now July, I can't work out if the spring was just the best spring we ever had, with more flowers and more birds singing, or whether I've just slowed down to actually notice it. I'm not sure. I think I might have just slowed down to notice. So the good thing that's come out of lockdown, I know there's bad things as well, but maybe the good thing is it's forced us to notice the sunflowers, fella.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think you're right. And I think, I've been aware of more birds coming into the garden. I don't know whether that's because of the, lack of pollution or whatever it might be. I don't know. I'm not a naturalist or a naturist for that matter.
I think there might be a difference there, fella. You get those. Yeah, don't go to the wrong convention on that one.
Yeah, exactly. But I think, there are some positives coming out of this, and this is what this series is all about, talking to people about, like yourself, about how, we can respond to the situation in positive ways, how we can find the positivity within us. And that's, your thing, your books are all about that positive thinking and, using the power within to change your worldview. And I guess a lot of people are going to be feeling gloomy, despondent, and worried at the moment. But do you really believe that we all have that power within us to change the lens through which we see the world?
I believe it. I know it to be true, mate, because I've done it. I mean, just a bit of backstory, because I'm sure people probably don't know who I am. I'm Dr. Andy Cope now, which is, I have to pinch myself to kind of appreciate that. So Loughborough Uni it took me about 12 years, but for about 20 years, I've been researching a subject called positive psychology, which is essentially the science of happiness and the science of well-being, the science of human flourishing. So my job at Loughborough was to seek out happy people and follow them around and work out why they're so happy. And of course, that goes against the grain of psychology. So for 140 years, just to give a bit more context, so I now got a PhD in human flourishing, but for 140 years, traditional psychology was, and pretty much still is, the science of what's wrong with you. So as a psychology student back in the day, I learned about phobias, disorders, anxiety, depression, paranoia, schizophrenia. We'd work out what was wrong, and then we'd fix you. So here's some therapy or some counselling. If that doesn't work, here's some medication that will allow you to function. So for 140 years, that's pretty much what it was. And I came at it from the other end of the telescope, as I describe, is if you think about it in the opposite way, for 140 years, psychology has never, ever looked at people who are already happy. So that handful of people you can think of in your life, and all the listeners can think of right now, there'll only be a handful who have got an energy and a passion and a positivity and an optimism and an enthusiasm and a spring in their step and a smile on their face. And I decided to find out, well, three things really. First of all, who are those people? Because we literally know nothing about them. Secondly, what are they doing that allows them to feel so amazing? And thirdly, I think most importantly, is what could we then learn from those people that people like me can then put into practice in our own lives so that we can feel amazing as well. And I take your point. I mean, it's lockdown, it's COVID. COVID's dreadful, and you can be too happy. That's one of the things I looked at in my research. COVID, fantastic. No, it's not. It's dire. It's terrible. There are people dying out there. In fact, there's an old English word, mate, grinagog. It's an 18th century word.
Okay.
Grinagog is somebody who's so happy you want to punch them on the nose. And I've got a PhD in happiness, but I'm not celebrating COVID. So I do think that there are certain, what I call learned strategies that you can adopt. After seeking out happy people and following them around and working out why they're so happy, it would be stupid not to apply that in my own life. So yes, I'm absolutely 100% convinced and certain that you can learn new ways of thinking and new behaviours.
Brilliant. So you're a Doctor of Happiness on your LinkedIn profile. So as a Doctor of Happiness, what would you say to someone who's at their lowest ebb at the moment because they've lost a job, seen a dream holiday cancelled, uncertain about the future of their business?
Yeah, there are a lot of people in that position, mate, which is why me celebrating, me going around being overly happy at the moment is not, overly happy any time is not appropriate. My heart would go out to those people. I mean, once again, to give you the context, pre-COVID, mental health was already wobbling. There was already a lot of people out there struggling. So the old world wasn't particularly great. There were 70 million prescriptions for antidepressants in England, written in England last year. 70 million? I mean, that's more than there are people. You could argue there's pre-COVID, God knows what it's going to be. I mean, post-COVID, when it's all, so it's going to get worse, not better. So my heart would go out to those people. And I would say it's okay to not feel okay, which is a bit of a mantra at the moment. I kind of think about it like this. We keep talking about the new normal. And I think there's good news and bad news on the new normal. I think the bad news, currently at time of talking to you, the new normal hasn't shown its face yet. Nobody is really sure what this new normal is going to be. It hasn't yet formed. And I think the good news is that nobody knows what the new normal is going to be. It hasn't yet formed. And therefore, and I say this with absolute sincerity, it gives us all a chance to shape it, to shape what normal is for us. Right now, I personally don't want to go back to the old normal, because my old normal was rushed and busy and stressed out and commuting 3 or 4 hours a day on the motorway every day. And I've got no desire to go back to that. So I want to shape, I think, wouldn't it be really, really cool actually to come out of COVID in a better place than you went into it? And I think that's why our books and our sort of workshops around positive psychology give some very simple strategies and ways of kind of going about the rest of your life, really reinventing the version of you decide to be. And that's all doable. It's perfectly doable, and it's quite simple, but it's simple but not easy. What does that mean? That means the concepts are really simple, but the biggest challenge for all of this, Mark, is to unlearn. So it's easy for me. So I know you're going to be talking about books in a minute. A brand new book for some self-publicity. How to be a Wellbeing. It's about rules for the modern world. And it's very easy for me to write a book that's got 20 new things that everybody has to do. But it's the hard part of personal development is to let go of the old beliefs that you had and the old ways of thinking that already grooved in. And that is 20 times harder to unlearn something than it is to learn something. So most people, I mean, the question that launched my PhD actually in 2000, about 15 years ago, very simple question. It was, could you be happier even if nothing in the world around you changed? And that's not a trick question, mate, but if you just let that rattle around a couple of times, and all the listeners, could you be happier even if nothing in the world around you changed? My answer to me, my little Derby head, was yes, which was really weird, because that was an admission to myself that I had the potential to be happier. So the world didn't need to change. In fact, the world wasn't going to change to accommodate me. The world was going to continue to do the world's thing. But within that world, I had the potential to be happy, but I wasn't being. So it's a bit odd and a bit of a realization that I was the biggest barrier to my own happiness. And then I was really lucky that I was addressing a conference about a week later. And I thought, maybe it's just me. So I asked 500 people, by the way, folks, could you be happier even if nothing in the world around you changed? And out of those 500 people, there's about 450 hands went up, perplexed, looking, yeah, actually, I think we probably could be. So what I realized, fella, was that it's not just me and it's not just you. Everybody it's part of the human condition, is that we're getting in our own way. So unlearning all those layers of who we're pretending to be and all that negative self-talk, and reprogramming, coming out of lockdown, a better version of you, is it's challenging, but it's definitely doable, and it's probably the most important thing you'll ever learn to do.
Yeah, and this storytelling thing is a recurring theme with all of these interviews that we do. We spoke to Emily Esfahani-Smith, who wrote The Power of Meaning, Tom Asacker, Business of Belief, Bernadette Giroir, who's written a lot of marketing books, but all around storytelling. And they all said, the story that we tell ourselves is so important in shaping our future. And Tom used a great analogy of Elon Musk, and he said if he'd have told himself, because he started at PayPal, he said if his story that he told himself was that he was an executive of a payment processing company, he wouldn't be making rockets now and electric cars.
No, there's a word, another new word for you, sonder. And sonder is the realization that every random passerby in your life has the same insecurities in their head that you do. Because once again, I used to think it was just me. When you're beating yourself up between your ears, oh my gosh, you're an idiot, you haven't got the confidence. I can't write a book. I failed my English at school. Who's going to listen to you? And I just maybe thought it was just me, but then you realise that every random passerby, even the people in your life who you think they've got their shit totally together, no, they haven't. They actually haven't. That's quite reassuring that they've got the same inner critical voice as we have, as everybody has. And it's not a matter of, you can't really do much about that because it's there, it's part of the human operating system. It's not software, it's like the operating system is built in, the inner critic. But I think part of the inner story and part of beginning to change it from an inner critic to a critical friend, that is quite a transition, and that's a really important transition. And not bigging yourself up pretending you're the greatest, but actually being your own best mate.
Yeah.
And talking to yourself how you would talk to your best mate. If you spoke to everybody else how you speak to yourself in your head, you'd have no friends, would you? Oh my gosh, you're such a douchebag, an idiot. So actually becoming that kind of critical friend and challenging your thinking, actually, just because I've messed up doesn't mean I am messed up. Everybody makes mistakes. It's taking that and learning it. And that becomes part of your backstory, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And actually, if you can get the story right and you can become a bit of a hero in your own narrative, then that sets you up for a bright future, because you tend to go for things and do stuff that's outside your comfort zone when you're feeling good. Whereas if you're critical and you think, oh, I'm a failure, then you don't take any risks, you don't try stuff.
Yeah, so that's one of the things I love about your books is the analogies, the metaphors, the little quotes, the little nuggets that are in there. I mean, I started with the Art of Being Brilliant in 2012 when I started my company, and a lot of these interviews that I'm doing people I'm speaking to returning to the books that they wrote during lockdown and finding a new resonance with them. And the Art of Being Brilliant is certainly one of those books. And there's a great metaphor in the book for happiness, which is Jimmy's story. Can you just tell our viewers a little bit about that?
I actually can't. There's a reason that's in the book, but I actually can't tell it. I've tried before and I can't, because it's so deep for me.
Right.
Like, such a powerful thing. It's right at the start of the book. In fact, I've recreated it. I tried to tell it at a conference once, got halfway. You know when you can feel tears and you think, oh my gosh, there's 500 people and I'm not going to be able to finish this story. I just asked people to buy the book and read Jimmy's diary.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, if I'd have just read that and put the book down, that would have changed my life for me.
Well, yes, it is. I mean, it's pretty deep stuff. It's about understanding what's really important to you. And the thing about the Art of Being Brilliant, which we wrote years ago now, is about life. It's not about work. It's about stepping into being a slightly better version of you, not just for the sake of you, but for the people around you. And what my PhD really has been about is not happiness per se. It's beyond obvious that when you're happy, that's good for you. It's good for your health. It's good for your creativity. It's good for your longevity. But it also, flourishing is what my PhD's been, and that's about that handful of people where your well-being is bigger than you, your happiness is bigger than you, and on a really good day, it leaks out of you, and it creates positivity in the people around you. So it's this infectious nature of well-being. And if I just give you some stats, when you're feeling great, it leaks out of you and positively impacts on 3 people removed from you. So you create a ripple effect. So essentially, if you're having a good day, then that's good for you, right? But everybody in your family, everybody you come into direct contact with is going to feel 16% happier simply because you're in their life, right? So that's your kids and your other half, whatever. Then let's say that your partner goes to work and everybody in the office then is 16%, I can't remember, I think then it's 10% happier. So everybody in that workplace is 10% happier. And then all those people go back to their own families, and their own families are then 6% happier. So it goes 15, 10%, 6%. So you're creating this ripple effect so essentially, mate, your well-being is your gift to the world, because you are creating well-being in people you haven't even met. That's how powerful this is. And I think I would say to audiences, if you can't be bothered to be more upbeat in your own self, don't do it for yourself, do it for the people around you, because that's what they really need, is you firing on all cylinders. I think in The Art of Being Brilliant, which is the original book, I describe it like the ready brek blow. And I don't know how old you listeners are, but if you were around in the 80s, there's an advert on British TV for ready brek. Central heating for kids as a strapline. Little boy eats his ready brek and he developed an orangey glow on the outside, which is a bit odd. And then he went to play in the snow with all his mates who hadn't had their ready brek, so they weren't glowing. And all his mates are freezing. Oh, isn't it cold and dreadful? Shall we go indoors? And our hero was different. He was the one well, he's orange on the outside, so you could see him in the crowd. But he had so much more energy and so much more positivity. He was the only one in the crowd going, don't we just love the snow? Shall we build a snowman? Shall we go sledging? And I guess ultimately that glow on the outside is that flourishing. And it starts on the inside. And when it starts here on the inside, really, is getting your mindset right and doing all that stuff that your other webinar speakers have spoken about, which is kind of common sense but not common practice. And we're back to the internal dialogue and the story and the intentional mental strategies that you can learn.
Yeah, and that having an effect on others. I recall reading something somewhere that if you're at a busy junction and somebody stops and lets you out, then you're more likely to be polite to the next motorist in a similar situation.
Yeah. Well, that's the pay it forward, isn't it? It's the ripple effect. I mean, the other stats, once again, I'm a bit shaky on them because it's been a while since I did the research. But if you've got a happy brother or sister, you will be 14% happier because you've got that person in your life. If you've got a happy friend, your happiness will be 70% raised because you've got a happy friend. And here's the big one, fella, particularly in lockdown. If you've got a happy neighbour, then you will be 34% happier simply because you've got a happy neighbour. So my challenge to everybody is to kind of get yourself immersed in positive psychology and self-help and be that friend and be that neighbour and be that sibling. Like I said earlier, it's pretty much your gift to the world. It's what the world needs. I mean, the other thing about the Art of Being Brilliant, casting my mind back, is not just about the ready, break, glow, is about life itself. And I do sessions in schools as well as businesses. And I tell kids, if you go to a primary school and tell kids, guess what, kids, the average lifespan in this hall is 4,000 weeks. Then all the primary kids are like, oh my gosh, that's like amazing. That's like forever. Yeah, 4,000 weeks. Brilliant. Thank you. But the adults listening to this, mate, they're going, really?
Yeah.
4,000 weeks? That doesn't sound very many. I've used a few. And I guess that's where I'm coming at it from, is I haven't got enough weeks left. I'm 53 or I can't remember, 54, I can't remember. But I haven't got enough weeks left on this planet to be counting them down, wishing them away, which is essentially what the human being does. Is typically we've got what's called destination addiction, right? And destination addiction is classic. It's like if you've got a holiday booked in 6 weeks and somebody says, how are you? You go, oh, only 6 weeks to go. Because like, and therefore what you're saying to yourself mentally is, I've just got to get these 6 weeks out of the way and then I'll be happy. So we're kicking happiness into the long grass. I did some work with the police force, right? And there was a guy there, he's about 40 years old, much younger than me, only 15 years to go. I said, what do you mean? Well, he says, I can retire at 55. It's like he's putting happiness off until he's 55.
Yeah.
Life's a short and precious gift, fella. Let's not send it back unwrapped. Let's make the most of it.
Yeah, and you use a quote, you're the doctor of happiness, but a quote from the self-styled Minister of Inspiration, Richard Wilkins, which I love, who argues that for most of us are looking for happiness in the wrong place, in the wrong filing cabinet, the external one, not the internal.
The external, we're looking for it out there, aren't we?
Yeah.
Richard Wilkins also talks about we're all superheroes just pretending to be normal. So quit pretending and be, there's lots of superhero qualities that you've probably got, but that are hidden. So confidence and kindness and compassion, and we've got all this, but it gets covered over in layers and layers and layers of gradually. Well, life's fairly tough. I mean, at the moment we've got COVID and we've got Trump and we've got Brexit and I'm looking out my window, it's July and it's raining and windy and cold. So we've got a lot to be angry about, and you switch the TV news on and you're shouting at the news and we haven't got freedom and we can't go on holiday and we can't do this. A lot of people are spending a mass amount of their time grumbling about what they haven't got. Whereas if you look at really happy people, then they tend to be much more grateful for what they have got. And it's that shift of perspective again. All that is it's a bit of a mental game, really. Maybe it's a trick of the mind. I don't care what you call it, but it works. If everybody logged onto this, just got a pen and paper and wrote down 20 things that they appreciate but take for granted, or 20 things you're lucky to have in your life that you're taking your eye off. And I'll tell you, the first few it'll be health and people, and then you'll get stuck. And then weird things will. If my 20 would be having a roof over my head, living in a democratic country. Having nice food, having supermarkets, living in a country where we've got COVID, but we've got a health service that'll look after me. Cornish pasties, my mum's homemade jam. I got a pot of homemade jam in my fridge, mate. I can't wait. to get some, some fresh bread and some butter and jam. So, I mean, if you just go through gratitude is like fertilizer of happiness. If you could just come at life from bedrock of gratitude about spending a massive amount of time appreciating what you have got, then your perspective shifts straight away.
I guess watching Derby County play wouldn't make that top 20.
No, I knew that was going to. I knew you were going to upset me. The biggest blight in my life is football. Is actually, I would describe Derby County as being a bit of a weight around my neck in terms of trying to rob me of my happiness. At 5 o'clock every Saturday, it's quite hard to be happy as a Rams fan as you're watching the scores come in. But I have learned to chill a little bit. It's funny, actually, football, isn't it? I know it's a game, and I know it doesn't matter, but it does matter. But the silver lining for me is that Nottingham Forest managed to somehow Houdini their way out of. Anyway, it's football. Let's not go there. Some people won't be interested.
Well, no, let's go there. As a Leicester fan, I don't want to go there either. So let's move on. How much you spoke there about being grateful and looking at things you should be grateful for, and I think some days most of us feel like that, and other days we don't, and we kick it all into the long grass. How much of our negative feelings down to the fact that we just can't be bothered to be happy?
Yeah, well, there's effort involved in it. You've nailed it there, fella. It's quite easy to be yourself averagely. It's quite easy to look around as a human being, right? Let's go a little bit deep here, but as a human being, we're gregarious creatures, which means we're social animals. So we have an overwhelming desire to fit in. It makes us feel safe. So you want to belong to a team, a tribe, a clan, a community, a family. So you look around and you do what everybody else does because that gives you a feeling of safety. And if you're a Brit, particularly, you look around and there's a lot of people being negative. There's a lot of people that hate Mondays. There's a lot of people that grumble about the rain and the traffic and the government and everything. And therefore, what you want to do to fit in is you become part of that. Without even knowing you're doing it, you become what I call a mood hoover. And a mood hoover is just somebody who is they're not sad and they're not depressed. They're just a little bit negative about everything. Lots of sighing and tutting and, Derby, classic Derby, right? If I stop 100 people in Derby today, say, how are you? 100 people have learned to say, oh, well, I'm not too bad, considering. I'll be right at 5 o'clock. In fact, East Midlands, I'm fair to middling, me duck. Right, so that's most people are a million miles away from feeling as great as they could. And I think, therefore, to be a better version of you, well, I know this for a fact, by the way, to upgrade yourself to that rarefied atmosphere of breathing in what I call that 2% version of you. So when you plot people on a graph of well-being, the 2% is the ones at the top, feeling great, statistically significantly happy with bags more energy, more creativity, do more stuff. It's harder to be that. It's harder to be yourself at your best. And it's easy to default to what is easiest, which is negativity. So it was, again, not depression. That's different. I call it the curse of mediocrity. In fact, I know we haven't got much time, but just give you a moment for me, and you'll appreciate this because you're, as a Leicester lad. My epiphany moment happened in Tesco's in Ashby de la Zouch. About 8 years ago now. It's a bit of a niche story, but just hang in there. I think it's valuable. I think you're supposed to have an epiphany moment in church, by the way. Mine was in the supermarket. Big Tesco's in Ashby. Saturday morning, I've got my trolley and I'm queuing at the checkout, and I had this realization, which sounds a bit silly, where I know it's going to sound silly when I say it. I had this moment of epiphany where I realized that wherever I go, I'm there. Right? But I mean, at a laser-like level of, so what I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in Tesco's in Ashby de la Zouch. And then I got through the checkout and I was in my car driving home going, oh my gosh, I'm in my car driving home from Tesco's. Then I got back to my house in Derby, I was going, oh my gosh, I'm in my kitchen in Derby, putting my groceries away. So my point, Mark, is that I can't get away from me. So I'm trapped with me. So what I realized in that moment at Tesco's is that's 4,000 week life sentence with me. I could put my trainers on and run across the street, but I'm still stuck with me. And you're stuck with you. And anybody listening to this is trapped with themselves for a lifetime. And therefore, what positive psychology has taught me is this: if I can't get away from me and I'm trapped with me for 4,000 weeks, then I may as well be trapped with the version of me that I'm proud of, or trapped with the version of me that's got a smile on his face and some energy and some confidence and some positivity and some hope and some optimism, rather than the version of me previously that I didn't have a great deal of that because I didn't know this then. All right. And so the PhD sits there as a 130,000 academic monster of a thesis that I wouldn't wish on anybody. But what we try and do at Art of Being Brill is we write books and we run workshops that takes the PhD, takes all the big words out of it and leaves it with, okay, how can I learn to take charge of the only thing I can take charge of? I can't control Trump. I can't control Brexit. I can't control COVID. I can't control the weather. What I have got is a better chance of controlling me. And if I can step into that better version of me, then I'm better able to deal with Trump and Brexit and COVID and the weather. It doesn't change them, it changes me.
That links nicely with, again, in the Art of Being Brilliant, a quote from another American president, Barack Obama, who said, change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. Do you think too many people are waiting for or want others to shape their destiny for them?
Yeah, I think, well, I was one of those people, fella. I sat in my life perfectly okay. I wasn't sad, I wasn't depressed. I was waiting for the perfect moment to strike, and then my life was going to become epic. And then I realized that I'll probably die waiting. If I'm waiting for the perfect moment, then I will die waiting. A bit like you giving up a nice, safe job in a newspaper to go self-employed. You could put that off and put that off and put that off and die putting it off. Or you can just, do you know what? I start to think, what's the best that can happen? So not the worst that can happen. What's the best that can happen? And if you shift your mindset to that, but people are waiting for, with quick wait. We've learned that Mondays are bad and Fridays are good. That's another massive learning mistake. But I fell for that as well. Mondays are bad, Fridays are good. So let me just challenge that. Let me just challenge that as a final thing, really, is what if you realize that of your 4,000 weeks of your entire life, a seventh of your entire life is spent on Monday. So that's a seventh of most people's lives that they just discounted because it's Monday, so we just try and get through it. And what if, and it's quite a big what if, but what if Monday and Fridays are completely neutral? So you spend a seventh of your life on both of those days. So Mondays and Fridays are completely neutral. And Monday only becomes bad because of how you've learned to think about it. And therefore, if you think about it in a different way, and if you can come alive on a Monday, then I would say in your job and in my job, and in anybody listening to this in your job, you turning up on Monday with the same enthusiasm you turned up on Friday, then that is, you shine, you stand out a mile, because you're the only one with a spring in your step, the only one with a smile, the only one going the extra mile. You get noticed for the right reasons. So it's not jazz hands and it's not, woohoo, thank gosh it's Monday. That's grinagog, somebody's going to punch you for that. But it's having that little wry smile in your own head of, do you know what? A seventh of my entire life, Mondays, bring them on. And you could argue it the other way. And sometimes I do in a conference, I said, Friday, thank gosh it's Friday. What if we flip it again? And I could argue that Friday is another week closer to death, isn't it, really? So it's like Friday's another week of your 4,000 weeks gone. But we're like, yay, Friday, fantastic. So I say, isn't Monday another opportunity to set a marker for the week? Isn't Monday another opportunity to go for it? Isn't Monday another opportunity to make a customer's day? Isn't Monday another opportunity to have confidence and hope and optimism? And of course, the answer to all that is yes. The only thing stopping us once again is our learned behaviours.
Yeah, I love that. And, our Mondays on holiday abroad are very different to our Mondays at home, and there's no reason why they shouldn't be, is there?
No, it's all here, fella. It's all here.
Yeah. Well, I've asked everybody, Andy, as a final question during these interviews, what you've learned about yourself during this sort of period.
Lockdown, what are we, 15, 16 weeks in? I've learned that I'm very lucky to have a family that I love, and that when you're locked down with people, and my heart goes out. If you're imagine being locked down for 15 weeks with people that irritate you or that you don't get on with, and some people are in that position, and thankfully I'm not. So I've learned that about my family, but I've also learned that downtime. I feel very creative when I was rushing around so much previously that I'd never had time to stop and think and get creative, and I've had time to stop and think, and some of the books that I'm producing now, I think, are hopefully, fingers crossed, touch wood and all that, the most creative work I've done. So it's done me good to take some time out and stop and think and get creative.
Brilliant. Well, we've spoken a lot about The Art of Being Brilliant, which is a fantastic book. Your new one, How to Be a Wellbeing, is out now. Just out, isn't it?
It's just out this week, mate. How to Be a Wellbeing, the unofficial rules to live every day. So it's basically about setting the new normal. I mean, we wrote it pre-COVID. It's got a little bit of COVID in it. One of the first wellbeing books that's come out post-COVID. So, like I said, right at the start, the new normal for you've got to decide what the new normal is, and that gives you a really good line in the sand going forward.
Yeah. And all of your books are available on Amazon, and I think all of them you do this look inside thing where you can get a flavour of the book.
Yeah, for sure. Go on Amazon. I mean, it's not everybody's cup of tea. Some people are not into personal development, and that's fine. But ours, I try to write, particularly The Art of Being Brilliant, is personal development for people who don't really do personal development.
Yeah.
You know, really the simplest, I think it's the simplest book in the world. And yeah, just read Jimmy's diary. Just go online. I think probably Jimmy's diary might even be on the sample on Amazon.
It is.
So just read that. Yeah.
And that's the first time we've had a cliffhanger on one of these in conversations with Andy. So thanks for that.
Well, thanks for inviting me, fella. Thank you very much. And keep Project Positivity, fella. Anybody who's on Project Positivity, I'm on board with that.
Brilliant. No, thanks for your time, Andy. Really appreciate it. Good luck with the new book, and hopefully we'll catch up again soon. And let's hope Derby have a better season next year.
Indeed. Yes, let's hope so. Cheers, fella. Thanks a lot.
Bye.